are listening to The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II, a producer on the show. For the first time since Detroit exited a municipal bankruptcy, residents will elect a new mayor. While this year is Mayor Mike Duggan's final year to make good on his policy promises, this election raises a number of questions about the priorities of the city's next leader. This hour, we're listening to a conversation about Duggan's final plans as mayor, and we'll interrogate the importance of Black political leadership. Let's take a listen.
It's been 12 years of Mike Duggan's time as mayor of Detroit. The city has changed a lot since he got into office. And that was the theme of his final State of the City address that he gave last night at the site of the Hudson's building. It was there that the gubernatorial hopeful reflected on things that he was able to help accomplish. So what has Mayor Duggan been able to get done, and what are the big challenges facing city residents that the next mayor will be tasked with resolving?
These are indeed the big questions, Tia, and to discuss this now and what Duggan said at his final State of the City, we have WDET's senior news editor Quinn Kleinfelter here with us with a big piping cup of coffee that seems to be your accessory that's always with you.
Yes, it's always with me. It was always with me every day that I was down at City Hall for daily travels there when I had to cover the mayor and the city council every single day. So it all flows together.
Okay, why did the mayor choose the Hudson building for the site of the final State of the City address? We know that there's certainly some critics of this Hudson building.
Well, that's true, but it's something that he led throughout his whole speech with as kind of a story in microcosm of the city itself, I guess. But it was very much as a symbol because it was something that people used to love about Detroit, and it's what they would call the heyday, which is the late 50s when the auto industry was booming so big and the city's population was as large as it's ever been. And then it sat there as a blighted, abandoned structure, more or less, when Hudson's went away. And then now it's been refurbished and brought back to be, I guess, the second biggest building in the city, and certainly a big skyscraper that Dan Gilbert's put a lot of money into. And in some ways, it was very much a sign that this is the rebirth of Detroit continuing, and something that Duggan said in his his final State of the City address. It's a rebirth that he promised is going to continue long after he will depart from City Hall.
Okay, so he sees it as an emblem of Detroit's revitalization, which we know was definitely focused on the downtown. We will get into that in a minute. But first, did anything surprise you about what Mayor Duggan said last night?
You just said a second ago that it was focused on downtown, and certainly that's been the case, and the downtown desperately needed it at the time. A lot of people will say, is this ever going to get out to the neighborhoods? And that's been something that people have been concerned about for years and years and years. That was something that Duggan actually brought up, which was, I thought, a little surprising. He has tried to get different things out there and has had different developments and different rec centers they've opened, things like that. But he said that the biggest battle that he had found in the city of Detroit was trying to get investment into the neighborhoods. And so he talked a bit about that and about trying to get rid of the massive blight. I mean, some people don't quite remember when Duggan took over, the city was trying to claw its way out of bankruptcy. And it was being known as a city that was the symbol of blight as opposed to redevelopment. And he went into this demolition program, which has gotten some criticism. But it also knocked down tens of thousands of buildings, left some vacant land that they could try to sell for cut rate prices. Again, people would say, are you selling off some of Detroit's treasures? But at the same time, it also nobody was building there, and they were able to get some industry and other things in to get jobs. So I think the fact that he focused on that, along with all these accomplishments that he's made, and that was something that still needed to really be addressed is true. And it's something that, he, as you say, he's been criticized for, but has tried to make some inroads into.
Now, Quinn, another big thing Duggan spoke about was the riverfront. Billionaire Dan Gilbert proposed a plan to tear down 2 office buildings to create 400 apartment units, a hotel, offices, and a public promenade.
He wants to build a 1/4 mile, Michigan's finest family and entertainment destination, all across the river, right? To rival Navy Pier as a tourist destination.
Duggan did more reflection than anything last night, but he spoke about the riverfront and the redevelopment of the Rensen. How soon are these riverfront plans likely to happen?
He kept talking about the next 5 years. In fact, one of the things he brought up was that people, city employees and others, were coming to him saying, are things going to continue on after you're gone? As Tia had said earlier, Duggan is leaving because he's going to pursue a bid to become Michigan's next governor as an independent. And so he would say there's this 5-year plan. That's what he kept referring to, 5 years all the time. That construction, we've got this project, that project, that project that have barely even started or haven't gotten going yet, and that they're coming within this next 5-year period. This was one that I think made a bit of news because when they're talking about the Rensen and what could be done with it, saying that they couldn't get any tenants in whatsoever, that they really were going to almost have to get rid of 2 of the 5 towers, but then that they had an idea of how to do the 3 that would still be something worthwhile, and that Gilbert said you needed something to be able to draw people to that area. Since, again, this is getting a little bit off far afield, but even Duggan mentioned this as well in his speech. GM kind of built this as kind of a fortress within Detroit to be away from the city, and now they want them to be connected into the downtown. So by putting what he was referring to as Navy Pier, which is a nice touristy upscale spot in the city of Chicago, and trying to have that along the riverfront here, that certainly would be a draw and would be a way to help the Rensen be of great use in the future.
I mean, a lot of us want to see the riverfront more developed, I'd say, but certainly some of us would like to see it more developed in an accessible way that doesn't feel like it's too touristy, too bougie, something that like regular folks can't enjoy more of. So I know that's a concern too.
And not to interrupt, but that was one thing he kept saying too, which I thought was a little surprising, is we need to get the riverfront turned back to the people. And he was talking about how it used to be that there would be developments and high rises here for lower income people, and then we'd have on one end and then these luxury things on the other, and it was all separated. He kept saying, he repeatedly said that we need to turn the riverfront and that whole area back to the people of Detroit, which is something that he's always billed himself as, and the people that will like Duggan will say is that he was a quote, man of the people.
Well, speaking of returning power to the people, here's Duggan again speaking about putting community leaders in charge of intervening in disputes.
Can you imagine what happens if every place we have disputes, we have the trusted people in the community talking? What could we do? And so last year, we had the fewest homicides since 1965.
Okay, so Duggan has certainly helped lower crime. You've covered other mayors and their administrations in Detroit. Quinn, what do you make of Mayor Duggan's ability to do that, to lower crime in the city?
I don't know that it's his ability necessarily. I mean, I think they put more money into it for one thing. I guess, I should change that, I suppose. He talked about that himself in the address, that because they were able to get out of bankruptcy and have a financial cushion of sorts, they had money to invest back into public safety. During the bankruptcy process, other cities were coming and poaching Detroit cops and taking them away because they were trained. They'd already had a lot of rough situations to deal with, and they were getting paid. Senior officers were getting paid the stuff that a starting cop in like Houston, I had talked to people there, were making. So they were really paid low. And Duggan was able to put some money into that and help that as well. And, it's still a super high homicide rate, but it's way lower than it was. One of the things, again, you asked earlier about was there anything that surprised me? Duggan, when he was kind of getting to his summation, said that he tried to deflect some of the credit, which you would think of any candidate that's running for something like, say, governor. But also one thing he did was keep talking about how he thought if there was anything that he really did that he wanted to take credit for, it was that he got people to work together. And that was a time. I mean, this was when not only the bankruptcy process, but it was when there were scandals happening with former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, people being put to prison, the president of the city council at times. I mean, it was a very friction-filled time in the city of Detroit government. And, a lot of the media were there looking for scandals at times. They were very suspicious of people in city government at that point. This is early to mid-teens, I guess, 2010s. And Duggan complained about that at times. I do remember him saying, the media, they're just always looking for something here. And it wasn't because the media was evil, it's because it was there at that time. And that was one of the things that he stressed during his State of the City address, was that he was able to show that the city council and the mayor could work together to try to prosper the city as a whole, which one would hope they'd be able to do. And because of that, that made an impression on the financial people that were watching as the city emerged from bankruptcy, that there was actually this cooperative spirit within city government. And because of that, they were able to get raises in credit ratings and get a financial cushion where there was nothing before. And they were able to go forward on that front. And so that is something different.
Quinn, we got to jump in here because we're running out of time. You're listening to The Metro. I'm Robin Vincent.
I'm Tia Graham. We're talking about Mayor Mike Duggan's final State of the City address last night. Our special guest is WDET senior news editor Quinn Kleinfelter. Now, Quinn, he did a lot. You talked about it, and you talk about it often, the things that he's done in his 12 years. He helped reduce crime. He's focused on growing Detroit's population, which recently increased for the first time in decades. And he put speed bumps and got lights on in neighborhoods, invested a lot in money in rec centers. You talked about that a little bit as well, and helped usher in the city out of bankruptcy and redevelop downtown and midtown. What do you think Mayor Duggan didn't do so well while in office? Well,
he was criticized for some of the payments that were made during the demolition process. And there was some concerns about that at times. He is a go-getter type of guy. So, I mean, there was times where he could come across being abrasive, and it wasn't that great of a thing in terms of cooperative spirits, the way we were just talking about a minute ago. I guess, one of the things is when I'm out and about talking to people throughout the city, there were most people, there was always criticism here or there of anybody that's a leader in government. But I continually heard from people that said they wished he'd run again and that they thought things had changed, as you said, that the street lights had gotten put on and the different aspects of the emergency response times had improved greatly when you used to call for an ambulance and had to wait forever while you're somebody's laying there in front of you on the sidewalk. And they would try to get there more. Public transit. There are all sorts of issues. So he's far from being a savior of anything, but he has certainly turned around some issues and coming in at a very rough time where he was mayor, but he didn't even really have the authority because there was an emergency manager in place because of the bankruptcy process. And they had to show that they could do 3 straight budgets in a row and balance them before they even were able to actually function as a mayor and city council. So to be able to take that and go forward, it's a rough situation, and I guess if he wasn't the right man for the job at that time, he certainly was the one that was there and was able to pull it off.
So, Quinn, let's talk about the continuing legacy that Duggan says after him, we're going to still see this growth. We're still going to see these things happening. What are the biggest challenges for the next mayor, and what do you think are the city's biggest obstacles will be left for the next administration?
Well, they keep talking, forever about is the development downtown ever going to get out to the neighborhoods? And are we going to see those be able to thrive more than they've had? They've tried to get rid of some of the blight and some of the other things, but it's still, really high, not unemployment rates, but low incomes that need to be raised, people that could get more jobs. When I would talk to people, again, that's one of the things, we need jobs in this area. And reductions in crime, it's still way high, even though it's gone down. And so there's a whole lot of issues that are not only just within the city of Detroit itself, but affecting a lot of them. And as we're going through now the Trump administration, you don't know funding-wise what's going to happen or not happen because Duggan always had a good relationship. It has had the other mayors with the Democrats in the White House. So that will be an issue of sorts to watch as we go forward, and also the effects, I think, on the city and the state's signature auto industry. And what happens with tariffs, et cetera, and how that is reflected in jobs, job losses, or potentially job gains.
All right, so Quinn, we got 30 seconds right now. Duggan is running for governor as an independent, and he's up against Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. What do you make of Duggan's chances at a run? It's 30 seconds.
He'll talk just as long as I do, so he'll run out of time easily. Also, he's running as an independent because he may not have made it through the Democratic primary, but he doesn't have to worry about that now. And he's not as known outstate as he is around here. If he gets into a debate with the Republican, Democrat, and him as an independent, is a chance he can make some inroads where he wouldn't have been able to before. So, he's third place probably now, but, when they have the debates, he may have a bigger chance.
WDET's senior news editor, Quinn Kleinfelter, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. Next time, we'll bring you back to talk about Daredevil.
For a long time, lengthy periods.
Okay.
Leave a big segment for
Yep, just for you. Thanks, Quinn.
Up next, we're talking about the history of Black leadership in Detroit, and we're asking whether the next mayor should be Black. We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay with us.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. This year, Detroiters will elect their next mayor. And since it's well understood that government should reflect the communities it represents, race is expected to play a role in the election. Throughout most of the city's existence, Detroit has had white mayors. In 1974, Coleman A. Young became the city's first Black mayor, starting a trend for Black Detroiters as residents continued to elect Black men to run the city. Enter current mayor Mike Duggan. He's the first white mayor since Roman Gribbs held the office from 1970 to 74. And Duggan took office while the city was struggling. He was the city's fourth mayor in just 5 years, and Detroit had just declared bankruptcy. Now, his tenure has really been transformative. It's marked by a considerable economic growth that's helped to revitalize certain parts of the city. There's been a small growth in population after the city lost residents for years, and crime rates have been lower.
Robin, we can't ignore the fact that Duggan is a white man leading a majority Black city, and his tenure could further the false belief that white leadership leads to economic prosperity and Black leadership leads to strife. But this conversation is not black and white, even if all 75 of Detroit's mayors are. Today, we want to explore how the race of Detroit's mayor impacts its citizens and shapes the city's perception as a whole. And we want to hear from you. Should Detroit's next mayor be Black? And how vital is the race for Detroit's next mayor? That number is 313-577-1019. Now, joining us in studio right now is Jeff Horner. Jeff is a professor of teaching at Wayne State University's Department of Urban Studies. Been on the show before. Welcome back to the Metro, Professor Horner.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Tia and Robin.
Yes, of course. So, you jumped in because we wanted to take a historical look back at Detroit's mayoral history here. You talked about the 1920s, which is an era that I didn't even think to go back to. So can you talk a little bit about the candidate then who was backed by the Ku Klux Klan?
Oh, well, sure. In the mayoral election of 1925, there was a candidate by the name of Charles Bowles who was backed by the KKK. And he actually ran for mayor on a write-in basis and lost the election only because 15,000 votes that he had earned on a write-in basis involved misspellings of his own name, and it was thrown out, and he didn't win. But I mention all that only to point out that while race has always been an issue in Detroit's mayoral elections, or it has been many times, the folks running for mayor typically in more recent times haven't used race as a cudgel, with one major exception I'll perhaps talk about later. But by and large, race has always played a very big factor in Detroit's elections.
And Professor, before we get into Mayor Coleman Young, can you explain a little bit about the state of the city just before he was elected? What contributed to his rise, and especially among Black Detroiters?
Well, I think in Coleman Young's case is that he had a stellar record as a politician before that. A lot of people, many of my students, don't realize how involved he was in left-wing labor movements and politics. He had been a state senator before he ran for mayor, and he had a very shining record, and he was really emblematic of a very successful, hard-working, hard-fighting politician, and really captured the hearts and minds of Detroit's electorate in 1973 when he won his first election. But I'm also very quick to point out that this was kind of the golden age of Black mayors being elected to big city offices, starting
across
with the country, starting with Carl Stokes in Cleveland in 1967. It's not to say that Mayor Young wouldn't have won with that happening, but to answer your question, what actually happened was he ran on a campaign in a city that was not yet 50% African American, and he ran on a campaign of integrating the police department, which was probably his main message, and that he did.
And, just sticking with that time right before Mayor Coleman Young came in, Detroit, like a lot of other cities, but Detroit had recently gone through a rebellion, and it was going through changes, lots of changes. So could you talk about the changes that possibly led to the rise of Mayor Coleman Young?
Well, I think one big factor, and this aligns with his promise to integrate the Detroit Police Department, was the mayor that succeeded Jerry Kavanaugh, who was mayor in 1967. The mayor that succeeded him, Roman Gribbs, actually doubled down on crime crackdowns and so forth. And so it turned out that Coleman Young's opponent was Police Chief Nichols, I couldn't think of his first name, who promised to continue a crackdown on law and order, which was, code for effectively saying we're going to keep blacks in their place in the city. And, of course, Coleman Young wasn't having any of that, and won it. It was a pretty close election in 1973, I think closer than a lot of people realize. But there it is. He served 5 terms, and he was a hero to many. I was fortunate to teach a class on him 2 years ago, and it wasn't even me teaching it. It was many people who worked for him. It was other scholars who've done a lot of drilling down on him, and the amount of loyalty to him was really astonishing in 2023, still to this day. So race was a big factor in the election of Coleman Young.
And Professor Horner, just sticking there, of course, we're talking about Mayor Coleman Young and his impact here on the city of Detroit and everything that led after that and into where we are today. But I'm thinking about a conversation that Ed Love had about his relationship with Coleman A. Young and how they were good friends, and how Coleman A. Young was this person that you could literally just talk to. He was someone you can easily relate with. Could you talk about how important that was at that time to have a relatable mayor?
Well, I think any mayor who isn't relatable is in trouble. But I agree with you. I think Coleman Young was kind of special, and I'll share. I met Mayor Young twice. Neither time when he was mayor, though, and it was in. I don't know if he was mayor elect or not at the time, but I was in downtown Detroit. My dad used to take us to get haircuts in downtown Detroit, and Dad recognizes him in a parking garage, and he was a senator then. He said, "Hi, Senator Young. I'm Dave, and this is my son." The first thing he asked me was, "Son, how are you doing in school?" And something I learned in the class was how dedicated he was to education and how important he saw it as. It was kind of an interesting moment. I had no idea who he was at the time. I was like 8th grade or something. And that was a very personal touch, and he didn't have to do that. He was in a hurry to go somewhere. He was either running for mayor or was a mayor-elect at that point. And so that impressed me. That was a retail politician right there.
Yeah. And just to go back to that, were your grades good then?
I'll have to get back to you on that, Tia.
Pleading the fifth.
And just sticking there, of course, he was a mayor during much of the white flight era. How was he perceived by white residents in the surrounding region?
Oh, well, again, I don't want to paint with a broad brush here, but there was a lot of ink spilled over Coleman Young and a lot of misinterpretations of things he said, such as asking after he got elected for the for all the crooks and thieves to hit 8 Mile, which was not a way of saying I'm gonna send Detroit's crooks and thieves to 8 Mile. He's saying I want to get them out of the city, and it wasn't anything aimed at the white suburbs. But yeah, there was a lot of hostility. I've looked at a lot of the press at that time, and there was just a lot of hostility that started from a beginning frame of reference that Coleman Young is against the white suburbs.
Yeah.
And many of the people who spoke in my class about him said he was not against white people or white suburbs. He was just pro-black, and he wanted to get people in important positions of power. He didn't fire all the white people who were department heads in his administration. None of that's true. So I can't explain that. You'd have to talk to a media expert on that. But it was very hostile. It was tremendously hostile.
Let's go to the phones and bring Mama Joe from Detroit into the conversation. Mama Joe, thank you for calling the Metro. Should Detroit's next mayor be black?
Honey, is this Robin?
It is.
Well, I just love that voice, first of all.
Thank you, Mama
got
Joe.
power, gal. You got power. I should elect you for mayor.
Thank
but
you.
the fact about it is, I'm glad I got in. So I can say this much, honey. This is Mama Joe, known in Detroit for the children call me Mama Joe, the big ones and everything. I was a community leader here for many years with, Coleman Young and Dennis Archer. Remember Jerome Kavanaugh, and all through these years, okay? I know Detroit when it was beautiful all over. It wasn't on west side or east side. It was just beautiful all the way over. And I'm from the South, dear. But now, speaking of who should be, I don't believe in what color a person's supposed to be as far as power and doing something very powerful or negative. We want somebody, we should. But I'm speaking for myself. Me and my great friend Evelyn Dukes, the Grosse Pointe Farm. She comes from a very wealthy family, white woman. I'm black. And we helped put Mike Duggan in there because we were tired of this garbage can, buck government leadership called to be. And Kwame Kilpatrick just took it, and we were going down the drain in the maggot pile.
Mama Joe, do you think then the question of whether Detroit's next mayor should be black in your eyes, is that a divisive question, an unnecessary question?
It really is unnecessary. We should want somebody, I don't care if they're purple with gold and green stripes. We should want somebody that's going to finish the job that Mike Duggan started. He did a very good job.
Mama Joe, thank you so much for calling the Metro and sharing your thoughts with us. I want to stay on the phones and turn to Brother Ray in Detroit. What do you think?
Yeah, hey, good morning. I think that whether it's first of all, Coleman Young, I don't think he was more pro-black, but he was more pro-equity and equality and justice. But concerning the next mayor of Detroit, whether male or female, they have to show strength and courage, take chances, and be a uniter. And also, will they have to cozy up to Donald Trump and his policies to get anything done? Because we know that President Biden sent a lot of money to Detroit. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, will that spigot be cut off under the Trump administration? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Ray. Which the idea of being a coalition builder, that is something that certainly Mayor Mike Duggan has been known for. Professor Horner, can you just speak to the need for Detroit's next mayor to be that kind of coalition builder?
Yeah, certainly. To be any big city mayor, you have to build a coalition, and this is exactly how Jerry Kavanaugh was elected in 1961. He had a very strong message of inclusion and so forth, and that drew a large enough black coalition to vote for him long before Detroit was a majority black city. But I want to go back. I'm sorry. I want to go back to what Mama Jo, I think was her name,
yes.
was saying about she doesn't care about the race, color, or whatever of the next mayor. And it reminded me of, I think it was 2010. I remember getting a call from a reporter. I don't remember from where, basically asking me the question, and it had never dawned on me before, that after Sheila Cockrell stepped down, she was a council member, white council member.
A white woman, yep.
And after she stepped down, this was the first time in history that Detroit had a fully black city council. And, I thought about it. I said, I thought to myself, this isn't even really relevant, if only because Marianne Mahaffey had been on council for 30 years. I think she was the council chair and top vote getter for about 25 of those years. And what that communicates to me is that Detroit's electorate was far happier with someone who was going to fight and work for them, which is exactly what white Marianne Mahaffey did in her roughly 30 years in office. And so I think this also goes to the work of Mayor Duggan, who also became mayor on a write-in campaign. It was in the primary, mind you, but he still got on the ballot in a write-in campaign and then won, I think, pretty soundly in 2013. So again, I don't know if that answers your question, Robin, but I think Detroit's electorate wants people that's going to fight for him.
We've been going from the past to the present. I want to go back to the past and move from Mayor Young to Dennis Archer, who became the city's mayor. And I'm wondering how you think he addressed race as a candidate for a city that was 80% black at that time.
I honestly, I went to a number of his speeches in person, and I don't remember Mayor Archer talking much about the impacts of race. It was just assumed, I think. I certainly can't speak for him, and I'm sure I'll be impeached on this after the show, but he knew Detroit was a majority African-American city. By the time he was elected in the mid-'90s, Detroit was probably pushing 80% African-American population, and so he had that to work with. And to talk about inclusion and so forth, he didn't avoid that discussion, but he really came in trying to advance Detroit, trying to leverage dollars out, as the second caller pointed out, to leverage dollars out of Washington, and did a really good job with that. But it never really, I wouldn't associate Archer with being necessarily someone who was giving a strong racial inclusion message. I could be wrong about that, but I don't remember that happening.
We can't talk about the city's mayors without discussing Kwame Kilpatrick, who succeeded Archer.
I've heard of him.
He may have had a tenure that was a bit rife with controversy. How did Kilpatrick's administration affect the city's perception
of?
How did it affect the perception that other people had of the city?
Of a negative perception, or this idea that black leadership, leads us to what we saw.
Sure. So Mayor Kilpatrick was a very controversial mayor, and I think that he hurt his own perception with his first term when he started using taxpayer funds, expensive cars, and so forth. And by the 2005 election, he was in trouble. He was way underwater to another candidate by the name of Freeman Hendricks. And Kilpatrick's supporters then took out an ad in the Michigan Chronicle, the big black newspaper, the biggest black newspaper in the city, the only remaining one as far as I know, and that basically pointed out that Freeman Hendricks' real first name was Helmut, and that he was, this was a way of saying he was a multiracial fellow, and that I'm blacker than other candidates. And that's a true story. And he was, doesn't matter, but Freeman Hendricks is a multiracial person. And, for the research I've done, it's the only time that race has been made an important point by candidates. Race has always played into Detroit's mayoral elections, but where candidates now bring it out, That's like the largest and best example, I think, of playing to racial biases right from the mouths of a candidate.
Professor Horner, this has been great. Before we let you go, if we could, we want to pose to you the provocative question that we're posing to our callers.
Oh, no. I'm going to get in trouble.
That's right. Does Detroit's next mayor need to be black?
No, there's no need for anything here except someone who has a track record, who can work hard, and is going to work hard on behalf of all people. So I guess I'm with Detroit's electorate. I'm not a resident anymore. I used to be. But I'm with Detroit's electorate, that they want someone who's going to fight for them, someone who has experience doing that. And I guess what I've seen is Detroit's electorate becoming less and less sensitive, or using race as something more important than competence in the office.
Jeff Horner is a professor of teaching at Wayne State University's Department of Urban Studies. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
It was my pleasure. Nice to see you.
Coming up, we'll continue our conversation about black political representation. Stay right with us on the Metro. We will be right back.
Welcome back to the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And in 2013, Detroit elected its first white mayor since Roman Gribbs in the early 70s. And since this is Mayor Duggan's final year in office, we want to interrogate how his tenure elevates a racial narrative that hovers over Detroit's political history.
To explore this legacy of black leaders in Detroit, we're now joined by Candia Milton. He's the chairman of the Black Slate. That's a political organizing group with a long history in Detroit. Candia, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure being here.
So your organization, the Black Slate, has endorsed a number of candidates for political offices over the years. It's an example of how black people began to organize politically in Detroit. How did the Black Slate get its start?
Yeah, I think that this is, certainly an important conversation as we talk about black leadership and its impact on our community here in Detroit. It's as relevant today as it was when we were founded by Albert B. Clegg just over 50 years ago. What our founders saw was that there were black mayors being elected throughout the country. One such example was Mayor Carl Stokes in Cleveland. Cleveland is not a city that's very different from Detroit. It had experienced a growth in black population, but up to that point, the black community had been electing mayors and representatives that were not black, and that were not always representing, or should I say, advancing the issues of the day in those times. And so, our founder just thought it was important that there be black representation in the office of mayor, but also that there was a type of support that mayor needed in order to execute an agenda that was in the best interest of black people.
What exactly does that support look like that the Black Slate has offered?
Yeah, so it's been support. Certainly we talk about the mayor's office, but then a mayor can't do it alone. And so a mayor would need a strong city council who's aligned with that agenda, would also need state representatives, because a lot of the laws are, that need to be passed are at the state level, but then also congressional representation, also representation on the bench. Making certain that, our people would receive a fair hearing from folks who understood, the struggles that we face on a day-to-day basis.
So the Black Slate has taken a holistic view of government. It can't just be black representation in the mayoral mansion. It's got to be at every level. There has to be continuity.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's about self-determination, right? It's about defining our struggle, and then what are the solutions to those struggles, defining ourselves and being clear about, who we are in a certain moment in time and where we want to go. And so Black representation is all about that, whether it be in the mayor's office or even precinct delegate for that matter.
And in the mayor's office, Detroit has had Black male leaders for the last 40 years. How significant is that for the city?
It has, I think, defined actually every generation in our city. I grew up, Mayor Young was the mayor. He was the figure we all had to look up to. And it was with great pride that we did that. And I can tell you, I've grown up with Black leadership in such a way that I thought it was commonplace. But to see a Black mayor, a Black state representative, Black judges, Black lawyers, Black police officers, Black people achieving, it gave me something to strive toward, and it gave a number of folks within our generation something to strive for as well. And so that example was also important. And so we can talk about the policies, we can talk about those tangible things that are important relative to Black representation, but that intangible, giving us something to strive for, giving us a dream that is very real. You can't dream something you can't see. And so seeing that every day, quite frankly, I thought it was commonplace. In fact, when I would go out of town and we would talk about our mayors, I was surprised at the number of cities or people who did not have that same example and something to strive to.
Yeah, you're summarizing here one of the reasons representation in politics is so vital. And when you talk about Mayor Coleman Young, who we have been discussing his legacy this hour, and particularly because we are talking about the next mayor of Detroit and what Coleman Young's legacy is. And I'm wondering what made him stand out to the Black slate, because the Black slate endorsed him, right?
Correct. Interesting you say that, because we were the only organization when Mayor Young first ran for mayor to endorse his candidacy for mayor. And it was between him and attorney Ed Bell. And when our founder and the committee interviewed both candidates, they were neck and neck relative to the issues. So issues around education, same types of things that we're talking about now. Issues around education, neck and neck. Profoundly neck and neck. Issues around transportation, around access to jobs, all the things that were housing and affordable housing, neck and neck on. But it was the one issue relative to the Black community's relationship with police that was all the difference in the world for our founder. Mayor Coleman Young, then candidate, or Senator Coleman Young, was demonstratively against stress, and made it very clear that this campaign is about how do we build relationship between police and community and eliminate or abolish stress. And so Mayor Young's commitment to bringing about a police department that, one, met the needs of public safety, but also justice and fairness in our communities was paramount for our founder, Reverend Albert B. Clegg, and it certainly was something that resonated with the community.
And now today we see these unique partnerships between the Detroit Police Department and community organizations that are trying to curb violence. And they're very unique and not something that we're seeing all over the country. And I wonder, do you see the long-lasting impacts when it comes to, which the Detroit Police Department is certainly not a perfect one, and as journalists we have a lot to examine about law enforcement in our city all the time, but there do seem to be some unique aspects of DPD, and do you think that some of that is part of the lasting legacy of Coleman Young?
Yeah, and it's been a struggle to get here. We've had some ups and some downs in this process to get here, but I do think that the way the violence intervention dollars and putting those dollars in community to help bridge the gap between police and community by utilizing community organizations whose ears every day are to the ground, not only seeking to decrease violence as it exists and when it comes up, but also addressing those things that lead to crime in communities, the underlying issues around education and how you support children in after-school programs. How do you when you see warning signs, intervening early, because we've seen over the years, how vulnerable young folk can be. And so seeing those early warning signs, addressing the issue of access to clean, affordable housing, addressing the issues relative to economic dignity and jobs and job training. And so, the holistic approach that is about early intervention and community engaged, community led, community informed violence intervention in partnership with our police department.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham, and we're speaking with Candia Milton. He's the chairman of the Black Slate, a political organizing group with a long history in Detroit. And we're talking about the history of Black leadership in Detroit. And Candia, I'm thinking about just, hearing about the Kwame years. And we're talking about the Kwame years, and I think about the impact, the lasting impact that Kwame and his administration had within Detroit, and I'm listening to some of our callers talk about the Kwame impact. So I'm wondering, do you believe or think, or in your opinion, see Kwame's impact on Detroit being a negative for those who want to vote for a future Black leader here? It might make them a little nervous.
Yeah, and to the extent that is happening, and I can see it. I would suggest that it speaks to the fragility of our confidence in our ability to govern ourselves. No one person should determine for us what the importance of Black leadership looks like and is in our community. No personality should drive the importance of Black leadership. I think it's important that it be ingrained in who we are. I mean, it's almost like, this conversation today around boycotting for a finite period of time, big box retail. And for that period of time, hear me out, period of time, shopping with Black businesses. That should be a way of life, that we shop within our neighborhoods. We shop in places that invest in our communities. And so it can't be either driven by the moment or driven by the personality. It must be a part of who we are as a people. Again, self-determination, defining our struggles, self-actualization, and defining our solutions. And that has got to be our cultural indoctrination, because our problems are unique in this country. There's a friend of mine, I work in the criminal legal reform space, right? And there's a tension within that space to make certain that people who are directly impacted are driving, a lot of the policy decisions. And one of my friends who's a pioneer, Glenn Martin, uses this phrase: those who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, but so often furthest away from power and resources. And so what Black leadership is about, and Black elected leadership is about making certain that we bring our solutions, given our unique experience, to the table and build power to make changes in our respective community.
Mm-hmm. And, thinking about just some of the things we've heard earlier as well, Mayor Mike Duggan, one of the first white mayors in the city of Detroit for a long time. And the Black Slate has previously endorsed non-Black candidates before. So what made those candidates so appealing when you did endorse?
Well, our larger issue is making certain that we have people in office who are best situated to represent our issues in a given moment in time. We have endorsed non-Black candidates. In fact, one out of the 3 elections that Mayor Duggan won, we endorsed his candidacy. We thought he was the best candidate at the time to deliver on issues that were important to our community. Now Senator Gary Peters, when he ran for what was the 14th congressional district, was a very new district for him. We endorsed his candidacy in that election. We just felt like he was the best person at that time. And what an investment. Now he's Senator Peters, and we have a relationship with Senator Peters. So it is about being strategic in how we approach it. And so, we have a commitment to, yes, black leadership, but we also have a larger commitment to our people and making certain that resources are delivered in our communities. What type of, are we looking for that mayor in this moment that recognizes who we are at our essence and can bring about solutions to the problems we're seeing?
Kendia Melton. He's the chairman of the Black Slate, a political organizing group with a long history in Detroit, and coming up at 11. Last year, the Tigers had a miracle season. Will this season be one to remember? Stay with us. It's the Metro.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.
You're listening to the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II, a producer on the show. In recognition of opening day for the Detroit Tigers, we want to revisit some of the conversations previewing the season. This hour will include super fandom, some baseball analysis, and heartwarming Detroit Tigers game memories. Let's take a listen.
For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth, the time of the singing of birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land.
It's the Metro. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And for those who know that was the late Tigers announcer Ernie Harwell reading the Song of Solomon 2:11-12. Ernie would start every spring training broadcast with this Bible verse. And while it does not feel like spring, for many Detroit Tigers fans, it was the first sign of warmer days on the way. Days being soaked in the sun at the old Tiger Stadium or Comerica Park. The Tigers started preseason baseball in Lakeland, Florida, having 2 wins in their first 2 games. Their game has been rained out today, but the team will play tomorrow at 1:05. Taking the field to kick off spring training for our listeners is a member of the Metro's team, producer Jack Philbranch. Jack, thank you so much for putting this together. What do the Tigers mean to you?
The Tigers mean so much to me, to be honest. I was even thinking last season when the Tigers were going on their crazy run, just like how the city was vibrating together. It felt like just everywhere I went, it was like high-fiving strangers I didn't know, talking about how good the Tigers were. And it really just brings me closer to the city and also to my family. My dad is a huge Tigers fan. He's actually in Florida and is going to be going to one of these spring training games, but he is so excited.
My aunts are the same. They might see each other. We might have to give them each other's numbers to coordinate so they can go hang out together.
He was offering to do some on-the-ground reporting for WDET, too, so we might...
Mr. Philbrandt. Reporting live, Mr. Philbrandt from Lakeland, Florida. I love that. So for you and for me, we both were around here during the time of the Tigers end of the regular season.
Tia, do you remember what it was like here at the station when the Tigers were going on?
It was buzzing. I mean, even seeing Quinn have a conversation about it, I was like, oh, shoot, Quinn's even interested. So I'm like, I know this is something happening. Yeah.
Quinn is not one to get excited over many things. He's very professional. He stays
pretty
level-headed.
even calm. Yeah. He's
yes.
really
So that
level-headed.
means
He loves
something.
Marvel, though.
Our reporters were keeping it very professional during the Tigers
course.
playoffs, too. I was hearing, like, the tonal shift of Russ McNamara screaming at the TV to delivering the news in the way he does professionally on the air. It was so much fun to see.
It was a great time to just be around a winning Tigers team again, especially when we already were kind of buzzing. We do know that we had a Lions team that's winning. And so it was feeling good. We're feeling great. You know, we're getting into these seasons. And now even having a Pistons team winning, I mean, this is feeling pretty good right now. You are listening to the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent, pitching batting practice as we're getting ready to throw out the first pitch and dive into the start of the Detroit Tigers season. And we want to hear from you. What's your best Tigers memory? Let's bring a caller into the conversation. Harold in Detroit, thanks for calling the Metro. What's your best Tigers memory?
Hello, and thank you for taking my call. I can remember, I think it was 1966 or 1967. My brother took me down to Tiger Stadium in my first game. I saw the New York Yankees, and the Tigers won a game.
Woo!
Denny McClain pitched for the Tigers. Mickey Mantle didn't play that day. So that was back in either 1966 or 67. That was my first game. I've been a Tiger fan of my whole life.
I have a question for you, Harold. Were you going to see Mickey Mantle play, and were you disappointed he was not playing that day?
Not really. I was a young fan. I was basically happy to go to the game. I was happy to see Denny McClain, and then, I saw Willie Horton, because Willie Horton played Sandlot. He went to Northwestern High School, and he played for the West Side Cubs baseball team, and his manager was Ron Thompson. I played for the West Side Cubs, too, in baseball, so we played for the same Sandlot manager.
Harold, I used to cheer for the West Side Cubs. It's just like a generational thing. They were always around for us.
There you go.
Oh, man. And Harold, just a quick question. When you were in Corktown, you're a kid, you're with your brother, did you guys ever hear about folks sneaking into Tiger Stadium back then? And did you ever get a chance to do that? I always wanted to try.
No, I never did that. No.
Sure you didn't.
Wink, wink. Thank you so much, Harold, for calling us this afternoon. And if you are listening right now, which I know you are, you have Tigers memories, give us a call, 313-577-1019. Now, Robin, the Tigers have a very, very, very significant meaning to you.
I mean, I'm not going to give it away. They do have a significant meaning. And I actually have the one and only my mom, Michelle Vincent, on the line to explain. Mom, the Metro's #1 listener and fan. Welcome to the Metro.
Hi, Robini. Hi, Tia.
Okay, so my mom just put my nickname on blast, which is Robini, meaning that comes from the era of Beanie Babies. And thanks a lot, Mom, because as you know, I have friends in Wyoming, in Colorado, and here who still they call me Robini because of that. So let's move on, Mom. So it was It was October 1968, and the Tigers had just won the World Series, and you were what, 18 years old? What were you doing?
18, yep. Well, I had just graduated from high school that year, and I was working in the Guardian building at a bank that's no longer in existence, the Bank of the Commonwealth. And it was an afternoon game. It was a Thursday, October 10th, 1968. The Tigers won, and all of the buildings downtown, all of the, office buildings just emptied out into the streets. People were throwing confetti. They were throwing, back in those days, the computer cards out of the windows of the tall buildings. It was a party, I think, probably like Detroit had never seen and has never seen. And it was just so exciting. Strangers were hugging each other, and it was the most friendly time I personally had ever experienced in Detroit.
Okay, so you ran down from the Guardian building, floor after floor, to get your steps in, and then what? What happened once you got out onto the street, onto Griswold?
Kennedy Square had a large water feature. It was sort of like a pond. I was with a girlfriend, and we passed by this group of 3 or 4 men in suits, and I turned around, and I made eye contact with one of them, and he smiled at me, and I looked away, turned back. He was still smiling.
Little flirting going on. Okay.
Yeah, a little flirting. And remember, I was only 18, so he looked very businesslike to me. But I still felt, he's
He's in your league.
Looking. Yes. Thank you. So he came up to me, and it seemed so out of character. He said to me, "I'm going to throw you into the water." And he said, "That would be fun." And I looked at him, and I thought, this guy's really, off here. So I said to him, "I dare you to do it." And he literally picked me up, took me to the edge of the water at Kennedy Square. And once it really looked like he was going to do it, like 3 or 4 other men came to my rescue, running up, "Don't do that." And then someone pushed us both in. And I got so scared because I don't swim, and I didn't know it was only 3 feet deep. And the two of us stood up, we're dripping wet, got out of the water, and he looked at me and he said, "I really didn't mean for that to happen." He said, "We should actually go have something to eat." And I said, "Yeah, what restaurant's going to take us looking like this, dripping all over the place?" Well, we went to this restaurant called the Flaming Embers, which is no longer in existence.
To heat up because of its name.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Dry
to heat
up.
up. So we sat down at a table, and then I thought, there's a couple of gray hairs that I can see in his sideburns. So I thought, I bet this guy is married. And I said, "Get out your wallet and show me that you're not married." He said, "Well, how's that going to prove anything?" I said, "Well, there'll be pictures of kiddos in there if you're married." So he gets it out. There's no pictures of kids. So I relaxed over dinner. We really had a good conversation. And then it got to be later, like 8:30 or 9. And I had come from the east side of Detroit on a bus, and the buses weren't running that frequently. So he said, "I'll drive you home." And red flags all over. Remember, I just had turned 18, just graduated high school. My mother, still those words in my head, "Don't ever get in a car with a stranger.
Yep.
You never know what's going to happen." So I thought, there's no other way home, and there's no way I'm going to call my dad and explain this.
No.
So right? I took the leap, got in the car. I figured, well, if I die, at least I had a great last night. But that didn't happen. He drove me home. He went in and met my parents. We made a date to have lunch the next day at the chic restaurant, and my parents really liked him. And then later, my sister told me, after he had left, she said, "You know what Mom said? She said that Michelle's going to marry that man."
And you did.
And I did. And we were married for 50 years. We had 3 children. Wow. And Robin, you are the baby. And to this day, I still call you Robini.
That's amazing.
Well, so the moral of the story here is that thanks to the Tigers, I exist.
Right. That's correct, Robin. You and your brother and sister. And it was actually me taking that risk, because I could have just as easily said, "No, thank you."
I'm so glad you were daring then and now, Mom.
Thank you. And I have to say, it worked out pretty well. We had a really long marriage, and obviously for, your listeners, Paul passed away at the beginning of COVID.
Yep.
And so
rest
that was
in
about
power.
5 years ago.
Rest in power, Dad. And thank you, Mom. I'm wondering if there are other callers out there who maybe had a love connection thanks to the Tigers or some other memorable moments. We definitely want to hear about those. The number is 313-577-1019. And Mom, thank you so much for always listening to the Metro and for sharing this cute and amazing story.
Go Tigers.
Coming up, we'll throw out the first pitch and take calls from you. What's your best Tigers memory? Who did you meet at a Tigers game? Maybe a lover, maybe a partner, a husband, a wife. The number is 313-577-1019. Stay with us. This is the Metro.
Welcome back to the Metro. I'm Kerry Jr. II, and in honor of opening day, we're listening back to segments previewing the Tigers' season. Let's hop back in.
You know what? It's time to play ball.
It is.
Yeah, up to bat is Josh Tebow. He's a teacher and basketball coach at Romeo Middle School and tries to go to as many Tigers games as he can. Josh is a Michigan native, but he never really attended games until a few years ago, and he picked an interesting time to show his devotion to the team. Since 2016, the Tigers hadn't had a winning record. In 2019, the team had only 47 wins and 114 losses.
Yikes.
Ouch, yeah. Yet last season, the Tigers went on a tear. At the halfway point, the Tigers had 47 wins and 50 losses. The odds of making the playoffs were not in the team's favor at all, yet they ended the season with 86 wins and 76 losses and made it to the league divisional series, but lost to the Cleveland Guardians.
Now, let's bring Josh back to the plate. He had a third baseline seat to the Tigers' miraculous 2024 run. After sticking with them through thick and thin and horrible and embarrassing losses, Josh was invited onto the field to celebrate with them after they clinched a wild card spot. Here comes the first pitch. And it's a base hit for Josh Tebow. Producer Jack Philbrandt recently talked to Josh about the Tigers' 2024 season and a team he's really excited about this year. Josh started the conversation talking about when his intense love for the Tigers began.
It was right when COVID was getting done, and there were not many fans there, but the fans that were there were like booing. They were booing Miguel Cabrera really bad because he was striking out a couple times, but I kept cheering for him, all pumped up, and the fans started to turn on me. They were like booing me and telling me to shut up and saying, "He can't hear you." You know, I was probably 15 feet away from the on-deck circle. He was facing the other way. He turned around and he pointed right at me for like 7 seconds straight. Was like, "Yeah, I can hear you." And all the other fans are like, "What on earth? Do you know him?" I'm like, "No, but they hear what we're saying, man. Let's not boo him if they're struggling, they're still the same human being at the end of the day." So I just started to realize that, especially for baseball, like the players can hear you. So I like to say positive stuff or goofy kind of funny stuff to keep good vibes going. And next thing I knew, it was amazing when they let me on the field and everything. So.
Yeah, I sat behind you a few times, Josh, last season, and your energy really enhanced my experience at the game, and I started getting into it too. I'm curious, what do you think of yourself as a fan in the environment? Do you kind of see yourself contributing to the outcome of the game in a way?
I mean, all fans can. I mean, it's called a home field advantage for a reason. But I do think for sure that it helps to be positive and get pumped up. I think that good energy breeds good energy. Like positivity breeds more positivity. And that's basically what I'm going for. Some of the fans that sit near me are. Most of them seem to love it and they're with it, but some of them hate it, and I understand it. I'm not trying to be all wild and stuff. I'm just trying to be positive, and I don't know. I like to joke around and say a lot of goofy stuff to keep the players lighthearted. But when a lot of people are booing, that's when I cheer the hardest or whatever. And I really love it when the fans near me pick up on the energy and they get all pumped up too. And I mean, it's great times when that happens.
Yeah, one of your famous chants is the torque chant, and you doing the chant got my dad doing it, me doing it, and so many people around us doing it too. What's it like when you have a chorus of people kind of join in your fun shenanigans at Comerica Park?
I mean, it's the best feeling in the world, honestly. I mean, certain times, the whole crowd will be following my lead at times, and they don't got to follow my lead. I just want them to be positive and supportive. But yeah, that torque chant is a fun one. You go torque, 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 and you get going, louder and louder. But usually, because Torque struggled a bit here and there, so the start of the game, he might, the first time he comes up, no one's doing the Torque chant with me, and it's like everyone's like, what's wrong with this guy, But then the next time, a few people are doing it, and, Torque hears it, and maybe it helps him, maybe it doesn't, but when I went on the field, he told me, that's what all the players told me, they go, we hear every single thing you say, and thank you, and that's all they said. So, I don't know. I love it because I know that it helps the players to at least a little small degree, the smallest of degrees. It does help the team, and the more people that can do it with me, like the better. That's what a home court advantage is. I always think about when the team's on the road, maybe they're struggling, and then they come home for a homestand. It's like, let's get them fired up.
Yeah. You had a kind of baseline seat to the Tigers' miraculous 2024 season. It was a slow start, but they got hot. And is there a moment last season where you kind of felt like, oh, something is changing here a little bit? We might take this farther than expected.
We kind of right around the trade deadline, we were selling and we sold Flaherty. We kept Skubal, so that was great. I went to that game, kind of did like a one-man protest, praying to God, please don't trade Skubal, please don't trade Skubal. And then we got Flaherty back. But right after the trade deadline, we struggled for about a week, and then I asked my friends for sign ideas, and someone's like, make a playoff push sign. So I did, and it was kind of a joke at first. And then we got Kerry Carpenter back then. I do remember mid-August, right before Javi was out for the year, it was like seventh inning, and I think we were down by 1 or 2, and it was real quiet, and I remember being on top of the dugout and yelling we will win this game. And I said, it's not a matter of if, but who. And the whole dugout heard me. You could hear a pin drop. And next thing you knew, Javi hit a walk-off or hit a game winner in the 8th inning. And then by the time, I don't know, it's so tough. By the time the end of August was rolling around, we come back for a homestand, and it was supposed to be a rained-out game. I think it was against the Angels, and there were barely anybody there. The game was supposed to start at 6:40. It didn't start till almost 10 p.m., and it was rainy. And I don't know. I just remember that game. I had my first sign that said, don't let the Tigers get hot. And the players kind of saw it and were laughing. And then next thing I knew, we just got the momentum going. And momentum's a powerful thing, So is good energy, and that's all I'm going for. So.
How many games did you go to last year, Josh? And how many do you plan on getting to this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say too many, or not too many, but just enough. I went to every game I could. I always take it one game at a time. I'll wake up, and if I feel like going, if I can find someone to go with, I'll do it, So I was always taking that a one day at a time, a one game at a time strategy, and I could almost always find someone to go with. But then after the trade deadline and once we started heating up in August, barely anybody was going to the games at the start then, So I would get there early and go down to the bullpen, watch the pitchers warm up and do a bunch of goofy stuff. I read an article in the Free Press, I guess Tarek Skubal and Jake Rogers and a couple of the other pitchers, Casey Mize, they do the USA Today crossword puzzle every day as a brain activity before the game. So I took a big I took a crossword puzzle, I blew it up into a sign, I filled the whole thing out, acting like I was trying to complete the puzzle. So they're getting ready to warm up, and I'm like, hey, I need a 4-letter word that's a loud summer noise, and I'm asking, Jake Rogers and the bullpen coaches and them, and they're like, boom. They're all, and so then I can see them behind the, there's tinted glass where the bullpen is, where they all kind of hang out, and they're all back there cracking up laughing, but just getting good vibes going, getting good stuff going. So I forgot your original question. Oh, how many games I go to? I don't know how many games I'm going to go to. I'd love to go to all of them, but I'm not rich by any means. I'm a school teacher, and I pretty much blew all my money on Tigers tickets and signs and stuff the past couple of years. But I take it one game at a time, and I'm trying to go to as many as possible. I don't ever take off work, so I'm going to miss opening day. But I usually go the day after opening day, and we'll take it one game at a time after that, and I cannot wait.
I wanted to ask about your signs because when I see you at the game, you have a collection of signs. Do you have a arts and crafts pregame ritual when it comes to designing your signs?
That's a good question. Not really. I'll just think of ideas, and I'll write them down to myself, and then if or when I get any free time, I'll just make the sign. Down the stretch there, the one game they had me come in early to film something for their social media thing, which I'm not really into, but I did, and it rained really bad that day. It was a day after we clinched, and they had me get there at like 9 in the morning. The game wasn't supposed to start till 1. It started at like 5 eventually. So I'm there for like 8 hours before the game, and then Bally puts me on TV for an interview, and I'm just like, I hadn't slept since the night before. I'm all blah, 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 going nuts, but my hands were just all blue and orange with all the markers from the sign. So I don't know. I don't really have a ritual. I love it when I think of, or when somebody can give me an idea of a funny sign, and like those are the best. You know, like I had some good ones for Scooble or for any of the players. You know, it's just I can tell it means a lot to the players when I take the time to do a stupid sign or whatever. Like Casey Mize has had some ups and downs, and I remember in August when he was trying to come off the injured list, might have been that game when it was really rainy. I was down by the bullpen when they're getting warmed up, and I'll wear like multiple jerseys to get the team going. You see me, you know, like the Torque jersey to get the Torque chant going. But I had a Mize jersey, and I held it up, and I could see his eyes light up. He's, yeah, you know. And then as soon as I got on the field, the whole team was super cool, but the ones that I had interacted with the most were like, man, we really appreciate it. So,
yeah, how'd that moment really come together of you ending up on the field after being there with the team pretty much the entire season?
Yeah, so it was that final week, you know, and we, you know, the odds were 0.2% in August, and then they went all the way up, and it was that last week, and we played Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday was a day game. Scooble pitched. I missed it. I had to work. Wednesday, I was at the game, and a couple people from the Tigers workers, the social media people, were like, hey, can you come in early Saturday and film some stuff for us? So I was like, okay. So I didn't think anything of it. And then Friday comes, and we clinched it, and the game ended, and the security guards were all like waving me down, and I was like, no way. And next thing I knew, I was on the field. But how did it happen? They told me the next day when I went in, they were like, hey, when did you find out we were going to let you on the, you know, we were going to invite you on the field? I was like, I had no idea. And they're like, oh, we had it all planned out ahead of time. And I was like, oh, that's great. But it just kind of happened. Like, I would cheer for the players. And like I said, most of the fans would get into it with me, you know. But some of them would be like, oh, it's stupid. But whatever, man, you know. You just got to be yourself. Like, I had one of my best signs was Zach McKinstry is master of the universe, you know, which is a stupid sign. But he's a proud Central Michigan grad, so obviously yelling fire up shits, getting the crowd all into it. And yeah, I don't know. I guess just all that positivity, or I was trying for positivity. A lot of it's just stupid. Everyone's like, what's this guy doing with all these signs and jerseys? The thing is, I'm not trying to make it about me whatsoever. And I understand it might look like that, but that's not what I'm going for. And like, it's just beautiful how it all worked out, because fans would say to me like, oh, why are you being like this? I'm like, I'm just trying to get the teams pumped up. You know, if you don't want to be like this, it's fine. But I'm telling you, I think it helps a little bit. So why not do it?
Yeah, one thing I am hearing coming from you, Josh, is your passion and love for the Detroit Tigers. And one thing that I think fans don't think about is how that passion and love helps the players on the team. And it's really nice to kind of hear that from the guy saying like, yes, what you are doing, Josh, and the chorus of people that you are turning up in the fans, it is helping us get over the line and win.
Yeah, because I've been kind of doing the same thing for a couple years, and a couple years ago we're really struggling. I had a sign like, what if we win out? The back of the sign just said like, win today, you know. But I was showing that around, and I know Riley Green did an interview in mid-August this year, right when we were starting to turn it around, and I read it online or in like the Free Press or Detroit News, and he said, what if we went out? And like the reporters were like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, it was just a sign I saw. But, you know, you put the idea in their head, you know, like basically you try to manifest good things into existence, you know, and there's good and bad in the world. But I mean, if you're going to a baseball game, you're trying to have fun, and you know, you're a baseball fan. Like it was just so beautiful how everything worked out this past year. So I couldn't be happier or more grateful, you know.
What are you looking forward to this season when it comes to the Tigers?
I mean, somebody said we should get Bregman, you know, Alex Bregman to fill the hole at third base, and I understand the pros and cons of this, but I'm telling you, I love like every single dude in that locker room, like every single one, like even the ones that are like in AAA that are probably not going to quite make it, like shout out to Akil Badu or someone like him, you know. So I'm honestly happy that we didn't get Bregman, because Like, you know what? I'm a big Sherman guy. I'm a big Matt Vierling guy, you know? Everybody, like Jace Young, like all of them. Like, I'm just real pumped up to see us grow and mature as a team because, you know, we were like the youngest team in the league by far last year, and it's just real fun to just see the growth. A light bulb went off in my head around August last year. I bought a Alex Faedo Florida Gators jersey because I guess he pitched in the College World Series for them like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And he saw it and went nuts and was like showing the rest of the team like, hey, look at this guy. We're going to teach him the Gator chomp, you know? Even when we called up like Jackson Jobe, like rest of the pitchers were walking from the dugout to the bullpen and they were all pointing at me like, hey, look, there's that crazy guy. So anyways, I got some nice college jerseys going for this upcoming year. I got a Jake Rogers Tulane jersey and a couple other ones like that. But who cares about my dumb jerseys? Just, I don't know, man. We're looking really good. There's no reason we can't make the playoffs again. Hopefully we can keep the momentum we had going. And I'm just a big believer in our coaching staff, just our culture, you know. Like everyone says, the clubhouse culture is through the roof, and I believe them, you know. Like A.J. Hinch really did a good job of, like, preaching to the team. Chris Fetter, all the bullpen and all the hitting coaches, like, it's next man up. It's like you got to look out for the person next to you. And, like, there's not enough of that in the world today. Everyone's only worried about themselves or not looking out for the other guy. And the Tigers started doing that come August last year. Really, really great. It was just beautiful to see. So I can't wait to see it keep going on.
How does seeing the positivity of the Tigers team translate to you as a baseball coach, helping these young guys get introduced to the sport and play the sport?
I coach basketball.
Okay.
But I played baseball growing up and whatnot. But no, it's just beautiful. It's just like, you know, I'm fortunate enough. I teach middle school and coach, and they're a real influential age where it's just great that, like, the life lessons that that have rubbed off on me from being around the Tigers, I can kind of put that toward the next generation, you know. Just I am a firm believer in karma and the universe working itself out. And when things seem like they're great, they're not all as good as you think. And when things seem like they're, like, horrible, things aren't quite as bad as you think. But just trying to have kids keep a level head, being humble, you know, unselfish, grateful. Everybody these days, oh, I'm him, you're too little. It's like, that's not conducive toward being on a good team, you know. Like, a team is stronger, can be stronger than the sum of its parts. And I hope that I try to tell the kids that I interact with that as well. But I know the Tigers got that going on, and I got some great kids that I get to teach and coach every day. So I could not be happier or feel more lucky, blessed, and grateful, for real. And I mean it, you know.
Josh, do you have any rousing words for the team as they go into their 2025 season?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know. I guess don't let the Tigers get hot, but beware. Don't let the Tigers get hot at any moment. I love the grit, you know, the gritty kitties, all that. It's all good stuff. Basically, I don't have it, but it is at a point now where I don't really even have to say anything. Like the whole team's already got this great rapport, which I did not necessarily whatsoever have a part of. I didn't really have a part of it, but I witnessed it, and I did help try to get them to be positive and unselfish and, you know, keeping a good, happy-go-lucky, fun attitude. Like, they all got that. I love it. So I don't really got to say anything to them. It's like they already know. So basically, though, don't let the Tigers get hot.
That was producer Jack Philbranch talking with Tigers die-hard and possibly their number one fan, Josh Tebow. Josh wasn't shooting with them in the gym, but he definitely knows that he helped them get to the promised land there. So hopefully he can help keep them going to the promised land. And if you follow the Tigers on social media, you've probably already seen him there too. So shout out to Josh for speaking with Jack. Let's go to the phone lines. We have Babs in Ann Arbor. What's your best Tigers memory?
Hi.
Hey, Babs.
This was at the old stadium in the run-up to the World Series, and I happened to be at the game with John Sinclair. Actually, I was with my husband, who played in the band The Urbations, again, way back. But John was their manager at this time. So there were quite a few of us there. And we were serious about the game, and we kept score in the programs. And so we always thought those beach balls that got thrown around the bleachers, which was where we sat, of course, were kind of frivolous. And one time, my husband, the beach ball went to him, and he poked it and exploded it, so it wasn't anymore. And all of the bleachers started yelling at him, F you, F you. And it was really loud. And but John Sinclair, for anybody who knew him, was a really big guy. And he just stood up next to my husband in his full height and just sort of stared around at everybody. And the bleachers sat down. They quieted again. And it was very funny. So he didn't want anything bad to happen to his tenor sax player. Yes. So anyway, love your show. Love thinking about great times with the Tigers again. And I'll never forget that memory.
That is a great memory. Thank you so much for calling us this morning, Babs. That's Robin. I'm thinking about that. Like, he stood up and he looked around like, "Come at me, bro."
Yeah,
come at me, bro.
Running defense. Yeah, running it hard. That's great.
Now we got Johnny and Warren. Hey, Johnny, welcome to the Metro. What's your best Tigers memory?
Hey, good morning, Tia and Rob. It was a pleasure meeting you last year, Tia.
Yes.
And it was pleasure seeing all you guys at the party 2 weeks ago at the Majestic.
Yes.
I have three quick memories.
Okay.
The first time I was 8 years old, I was at a Baptist youth ministry group. I got to meet Ernie Harwell. And when I met Ernie Harwell, he signed my baseball mitt. And I said, I enjoy watching you on TV. That's an Ernie Harwell memory. The first baseball game I went to was at Tiger Stadium. My dad took me during the Empire Strike. They had an Empire Strike back in the early 80s. And that was my first game. And then when the Tiger Stadium was shutting down, getting ready to close, I got to hang out with former police chief Ike McKinnon at the Tiger Stadium. So those are my three quick memories.
And Johnny and Warren, I did we see you at the clothing store when we did the live broadcast?
Yes, I did.
Yes, Johnny, nice to speak with you and chat with you and see you again at the event last week. And thank you so much for calling us this afternoon.
And one last quick thing. I was short high school credits in CAS. I went back to high school last summer, and I got my diploma.
Congratulations,
Johnny. Wow. We're clapping for you over here.
We are. Thanks for sharing that with us.
We're just about halfway through our broadcast, more than that actually, and it's overdue. It's time for Tia and me to take a breather and stretch because after all, no baseball game is complete without the seventh inning stretch and thousands of fans joining together to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Tia's about to give us her rendition in a minute here. The song was written in 1908 by Jack Norworth and Albert Von Tisler, two guys who had never seen a baseball game, and they wouldn't attend one for another couple decades. While the song was first played at a game in 1934, then Chicago White Sox announcer Harry Carey started the sing-along in 1976.
Is it my time? Is it my time to get ready to sing?
No,
I'm
not
kidding.
yet, not yet.
From 1972 to 1982, you could hear Dan Greer playing the organ at Tiger Stadium. Dan died in 2023, and he was the only organist to play for the Tigers, the Red Wings, and the Pistons in one season. He was busy. While Greer tested some of Ernie Harwell's original tunes on the crown, he was forbidden from playing Three Blind Mice after controversial calls from the umpires. Interesting. Coming up, our closers getting warmed up in the bullpen as we speak. Stay right there with us as we get ready for Sean Windsor.
Here's Dan Greer playing Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
to the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II, and we are revisiting our preview of the Tigers season. Let's jump back in.
I think I need a hot dog and a beer and some popcorn.
God, you took the words out of my mouth.
Welcome back to the Metro. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham, and we're going to get hot dogs and popcorn. And I think you and I, you know what? We should broadcast from opening day. We should do that.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
All right.
The
Get to work, producers.
Get to work, Sam, Jack, David. Come on. We got to get this going. The Detroit Tigers, they did make an improbable playoff run after struggling through much of the 2024 season. And the team suited up for the start of spring training over this past weekend. It will be a good opportunity to evaluate the talent that will be on the roster this season, particularly for some of the team's off-season additions.
Sean Windsor is a sports columnist for the Detroit Free Press. He's also the co-host of the Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean podcast. He joins us now to give us a preview of the Tigers 2025 season. Sean, welcome to the Metro.
Oh, it's good to be with you guys. I can't believe we're talking baseball already.
I mean, it's going to be 50 degrees today, so it feels more appropriate than I thought it would earlier, like a couple days ago when it was about 20 degrees. Sean, let's start with the end of last season. The Tigers weren't a strong team until the end of this season. That's when they made that impressive run into the playoffs. What fueled their performance near the end there?
Lots of things. You're right. It's crazy to think back. I was just looking at the numbers recently. They were 8 games below 500 in early August. I can't remember the exact date. 8 games below 500, and then finished the season, I want to say 31-13 or some ridiculous number to get the wild card spot to finish 6 games over 500. No, 10 games over 500. I think they won 86 games. That's one of the more historic turnarounds in modern history in baseball, and to do it without real superstar power. I mean, obviously they've got a superstar pitcher, Cy Young winner, and Terry Skubal, but to do it without all these big bats and kind of a thin rotation and the starting rotation after Skubal, the pitching chaos, as their manager A.J. Hinch described, using bullpen guys. Just there was a little bit of something that's unexplainable going on, right? It's just one of those things in sports that really resonated, and it's hard to maintain that, but to watch a team that late in the season sort of figure it out and then get on whatever magic beans they were on, that was something.
Yeah, I mean, it has me thinking about the word magic here, because you're talking about something that feels a little inexplicable, and sometimes a team just they're able to vibe and do something that is really unexpected. How would you grade the team's off season? Did they make the necessary moves to hopefully make another playoff run?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, they were trying to go. They were trying to get third baseman Alec Bregman from the Houston Astros, and that did not end up happening. He signed with the Boston Red Sox, and I know a lot of fans were probably hoping for him. He's somebody with a really good track record in the regular season and the postseason. Other than that, their moves were they signed Alex Cobb as a starting pitcher, but he's going to be out for a bit, probably at least another month. Probably a month into the season with a hip injury, and then they got a second baseman from the Yankees in Gleyber Torres. But that's more or less it. They're kind of relying on some of the young guys to take a step, both positionally and in the starting rotation, and that's where the unknown is a little bit. Yeah, Tigers fans would love for the team to open up the checkbook, so to speak. Not that we have checkbooks anymore, and go out and get big names. But I think the organization still wants to lean into their young guys in the developmental program and see if they can build on what they did last year.
Sean, the real question is, can the moment of last season's playoff push somehow be carried into this upcoming season?
Well, that's an interesting thought. Jim Leland, who managed the Tigers forever, used to talk about how baseball was the one sport there wasn't really any momentum. I don't know if I agreed with that. Of course, he knows a lot more about the game than I do, but he used to always say momentum in baseball is the next day's starting pitcher, right? And how good he may be or what kind of day he may have. But I want to posit this because we were talking about. I can't believe it's spring training here already, and yes, it's going to be 50, and the sun looks like it's out a little bit today. But how about this for a theory? There's some kind of vibe going on in our city and area right now with all these teams. So normally people love talking about the Tigers this time of the year, at least for the last decade, because the Wings and the Pistons haven't been much. But both of those teams, I mean, the Pistons have won 6 in a row. The Red Wings were on a winning streak before the break. They won again yesterday or last night in overtime, and both look like they're going to get into the playoffs for the first time in forever. The Lions are doing what they're doing, so maybe there's something a little bit larger going on right now, and the Tigers are just going to keep being plugged into that. Oof. How about that?
I think we all like the sound of that our teams are feeding off the energy in the city. They're feeding off of the revival of the city and everything that's going on here. I think that's something that we can all wrap our arms around. You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We are talking about the upcoming 2025 Tiger season with sports columnist Sean Windsor. Now, Sean, you were just talking a little bit about this young team, just seeing a continuation of last year. I just want to talk a little bit about the continuation of last year's pitching rotation and talking a little bit more about what we're going to see or what you expect to see in terms of this pitching rotation. We did see a few additional Tigers pitchers added to the lineup. So can we just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I guess I should have mentioned earlier when I was speaking of pitching and speaking of off-season additions, it's just because he pitched here the year before last, and Jack Flaherty, who'll probably be their number 2 starter. He went off to the Dodgers late in the year before, and he's back. So obviously, you start with Skubal, as as good a pitcher as there is in baseball, and then you have Jack Flaherty. Then Reese Olson, I think, who showed a lot last year. He was the only other starter in the playoffs, which is really crazy when you think about it, because they beat the Astros and took the Cleveland Guardians to 5 games. But and then the young guys, well, maybe not young guys, but one young guy, Jackson Jobe, who showed some promise. They're relying on him maybe in that 4th spot. And then the 5th spot, I think at this point, with Alex Cobb out for a while, I think that's kind of up for grabs. I know they're looking at Matt Manning in spring training. Casey Mize, a former number 1 overall draft pick. He has at least showed a little bit. He's only thrown he started the other day. I can't remember if it was against Philly or I kind of it all blends together. But he's looking a little bit better. So Kenta Maeda, who struggled last year, who's thrown a little bit better so far. Look, it's always so much hope in the spring training, right? So that 5th spot's going to be interesting and up for grabs for a while. But I think the rotation, at least the top 3 in particular, look really, really good. And if Jobe is who they think he can be, the top 4, they're going to be as good as anybody in baseball.
And briefly here, because we're getting down to the wire, last season, the team's first winning season under manager AJ, that was the first winning season under AJ Hinch. Can you talk a little bit about that continuation as well? And do we see this young team melting and meshing together a little bit better with AJ Hinch? And do we see something starting to brew here?
I think so. I think he's one of the best managers in the game. I think we saw that last year. He and the pitching coach, Chris Fetterman, it's a pretty great combo. Hinch is willing to try, and first of all, his ability to be tough, but also be kind of a player's manager. He's a great communicator, and he's just an interesting sinker. And we saw that in the run last year, in the way that he managed having one starting pitcher, and how unusual that is, right? Just the moving the positional players around, and they all bought in. And he talked about this at the playoff run last year, that nobody was really worried about their contract at that point. And that's going to be the thing, right? Mm-hmm. Can you say, all right, I'm going to play whatever role, I'm going to go to the park, and yes, I'm not going to know exactly when I'm going to play, what inning I might get called in, what inning I might have to pinch hit, whatever. That's okay. I'm going to do what the management thinks is best. By management, I mean Hinch. And that was part of the magic last year. Does that work long term? Because guys want to get paid, they want to be able to show numbers and consistency and all that. That's a good question. So we'll see if that part can roll over into this spring and summer.
Which is this I love that you and Robin talked about it a little bit earlier, but you're seeing positivity in the Pistons once again. It's the first time we've seen positive light for the Pistons in a long while. Same thing with the Lions, of course, and then the Red Wings are starting to show a little life as well. So just starting to see these teams kind of put together, these makeshift teams that turn out to be really, really great teams have been amazing to follow along with. But fans are looking for ways to follow along as well. So we do have Tigers games that were blacked out caused by contract disputes between Comcast and Diamond Sports Group last year. What do we know about how fans are going to be able to watch the Tigers this year?
Well, they're going to be on they've changed names so many times. It was Bally Sports. It's now FanDuel.
Yeah.
It's now FanDuel, and you can buy directly from them, download the app and stream on your phone or your laptop, or if you still have a desktop at home, maybe an iPad for some of us who are a little bit older. But I know so few have cable these days, but Xfinity, for example, they have FanDuel, and so there are ways to do it, but it's not like turn on pass in the old days, that's for sure.
Yeah, Sean. Well, we're going to have you on for sure as soon as this season gets underway. Sean Windsor is a sports columnist for the Detroit Free Press and the co-host of the Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean podcast. As always, talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, Carey Jr. II, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Our senior producer is David Lyons. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.